Hi, everybody. This is your narrator, Ollie, and I hope you are ready to relax to our story today. Find a comfortable place, let the noise of your day grow distant, and allow your imagination to wander with me into forests of deep green, into halls of trolls and courts of kings, as we follow the path of a boy, a blue belt, and a destiny far grander than his humble beginning. Chapter 1. The Beggar Woman and the Hidden Strength. Once upon a time, in a land of high hills and shadowed valleys, there walked an old beggar woman along a stony path. Her back was bent from years of wandering, and her clothes were patched with pieces of many colors, yet her eyes were sharp and restless, always searching for a door that might open, a coin that might fall into her hand. Beside her trotted a small boy, her son, a thin lad with bright eyes and bare feet, used to the taste of hunger and the feel of wind through worn cloth. He carried no toys, owned no books, but he had something that children of richer homes sometimes lack, a quick mind and a heart that dared to wonder whether life might one day be different. They had begged their way through a village that morning, and the old woman's bag now hung heavy over her shoulder, filled with bread crusts, a scrap of cheese, and the copper coins that had been given, grudgingly or kindly, at door after door. Satisfied with the day's gathering, she turned toward the hills, for somewhere beyond them lay the tumble-down hut they called home. The path they took wound steeply upward between heather and low juniper, and as they climbed, the sky turned from gray to a pale, promising blue. The boy walked a few steps ahead, skipping from stone to stone, while his mother trudged behind, muttering to herself about the cost of flour and the meanness of farmers. At a place where two narrow paths crossed like threads in a weaving, the boy's eye caught a glimmer of color half hidden in the grass. There, lying as though forgotten by the world, was a belt, no more than a strip of leather to most eyes, but dyed a deep clean blue that seemed almost to shine in the clear air. "Mother," the boy called, "look what lies here. May I pick it up?" The old woman stopped, squinted, and saw the belt glinting at the fork in the trail. A shadow passed over her face. "Leave it," she snapped. "Things that shine on lonely paths often hide mischief. There may be witchcraft in that belt. Do not touch it." Her voice carried the tone of someone who had seen more of the world's sharp edges than she cared to remember. She clutched her bag tighter and threatened, half in fear and half in anger, that if he did not follow at once, she would make him regret it. The boy obeyed in outward show, yet his curiosity was not so easily turned aside. A thought took root in his mind, as stubborn as a seed wedged in rock. They walked on a little farther, until the trees grew closer and the path dipped into a hollow full of shadows. Suddenly, the boy winced and pressed a hand to his stomach. "Mother," he murmured, "I must step aside for a moment. Go on a little and rest. I shall be back soon." She sighed, told him not to be long, and settled herself on a tree stump, setting the heavy bag beside her. The woods around her hummed with the low sounds of birds and insects, but still she glanced about nervously, feeling the weight of unseen things. The moment he was out of her sight, the boy darted back down the path, legs flashing like quicksilver. The belt still lay where the paths crossed, waiting. He snatched it up, half expecting some thunderclap or a cloud of smoke, but the forest remained quiet. He wrapped the belt around his waist and fastened it. Instantly, a strange warmth surged through his body. His arms felt full of power, his legs light as springs, his chest strong as if he could shout the mountains down. He flexed his fingers in wonder. He felt as though he might lift the very hill they stood on. He hurried back to his mother, who sat frowning, her patience worn thin by worry and weariness. "Where have you been, dawdling?" she scolded. "Do you not see the sun sinking? The night will be on us before we are over the ridge." But the boy, with the blue belt hidden under his ragged shirt, felt a quiet smile rise inside him. He said nothing of his adventure, only shouldered the bag to help her, though she tried to snatch it back, still not used to a child who did more than he was forced to do. They walked on until the path grew steeper and the wind keener, tugging at their clothes. Halfway up the hill, the old woman's breath grew short, and her steps faltered. "Let me rest," she said at last, sinking down beneath a bush. "These old legs are not what they were." The boy looked up at a rocky crag rising above them like a dark tooth against the sky. "While you rest, mother," he said gently, "may I climb to the top of that crag and see whether there are any folk living nearby? Perhaps we are close to a house, and we could sleep under a roof tonight." She waved a tired hand. "Yes, yes, go if you must. Only do not fall and break your neck. Trouble follows us soon enough, without you going to meet it." With the strength of the blue belt pulsing around his waist, the boy bounded up the crag as though his feet knew the rock's secrets. From the top, he could see the northern sky stretching wide and dark, and there, cutting through the evening dusk, shone a bright, steady light, too large for a star and too low for the moon. The sight stirred hope in his chest. He scrambled back down, stones scattering under his feet. "Mother," he called, "I can see a light to the north, close by. There must be a house there. If we hurry, we might reach it before the night fully falls." The old woman rose, her joints protesting, and heaved the bag once more over her shoulder. They walked toward the light, but before long their path was blocked by a steep spur of the hill, a sheer ascent that would have turned back ordinary travelers. "Just as I feared," she groaned. "Here our way ends. There will be no house for us tonight, only cold stones for a bed." But the boy, feeling the strength of the blue belt singing in his bones, bent down and scooped the bag under one arm and his mother under the other, as though they were scarcely heavier than bundles of twigs. With a sure-footed dash, he ran straight up the crag, carrying them both, and in a breath they stood upon the ridge. His mother gasped, too alarmed even to scold. "Look," he said softly. "Can you not see it now? The bright light, just there?" She squinted ahead, and at last her eyes made out the glow spilling forth from a great red-painted house tucked among the trees. But fear came quickly to sit beside the surprise on her face. "There are no farming folk in this forest," she murmured. "I know this land. There is not a single Christian soul here. If a house stands where I know of none, then trolls must live in it. Better we sleep under the open sky than beneath a troll's roof." The boy shook his head. "Where there is light, there is life," he said quietly. "And life is better than freezing on a bare rock. Trolls or no trolls, we shall knock at that door." With that, he went forward toward the red house, his mother following reluctantly, her heart pounding faster with each step. Chapter 2. The Red House and the Giant Host. The red house loomed larger as they approached, its walls glowing in the strange half-light that lingers when the sun has fled, but the night is not yet fully grown. Smoke rose lazily from a chimney so broad that a man could almost stand within it. The windows shone with a fire's warm reflection. The boy lifted the heavy wooden latch and opened the door. The heat of a great hearth washed over them, filled with the scent of pitch pine and something savory. For a moment, the boy's eyes were dazzled, and he saw only the blaze of the fire and shadows dancing on the rafters. Then, as his sight adjusted, he noticed a figure sitting on a bench along the wall, a man so large that he seemed almost part of the house itself. His shoulders brushed the beams, his legs were like tree trunks, his beard flowed down his chest like tangled roots, and his hands, resting on his knees, were big enough to palm a barrel. The old woman, catching sight of him, let out a strangled cry. The room spun before her eyes, and she crumpled to the floor in a dead faint. The boy, heart-hammering yet strangely unafraid, perhaps because of the belt, perhaps because his courage was awakening, stepped forward and greeted the giant as though he were an old relative. "Good evening, grandfather," he said with respectful boldness. The enormous man raised his shaggy eyebrows. "Grandfather," he rumbled, "for 300 years I have sat on this bench, and never before has any soul come into this hall and called me grandfather. You are a bold little fellow." He stroked his beard, amused, and motioned for the boy to sit beside him. The lad climbed up onto the bench, which creaked under their combined weight, and they began to speak together, as though they had known each other longer than the fading day. After a while, the giant nodded toward the heap on the floor. "What has become of your mother? She lies there as though struck down." "Oh, that is only my mother," the boy answered lightly. "She faints easily when she sees anything grander than her own kitchen. Allow me." He went and seized the old woman by the shoulders, dragging her gently but firmly along the floor until the cold of the stone and the roughness of his treatment brought her back to herself. She sputtered and clawed at him, then scrambled to a corner and sat on a pile of firewood, eyes fixed wide upon the giant, too frightened even to weep properly. The boy returned to the bench. "We have walked far today," he said, "and the night comes fast. Might we sleep here beneath your roof, if it please you?" The giant shrugged with a slow, ponderous motion. "There is room enough," he replied. "You may stay the night." They spoke some time longer, and as they talked, the boy's stomach began to remind him that begging fills a bag more quickly than a belly. He shifted a little on the bench. "Is there food in this house as well as shelter?" he asked at last, a hopeful note in his voice. The giant chuckled. "Food?" he repeated. "Oh, that may be found." He rose to his full height, which seemed to make the rafters bow a little, and went to the hearth. From beside it, he took an armful of dry pitch pine logs. Then, as if that were nothing, another armful, until he had thrown 6 great loads upon the fire. The flames leapt up with a roar, turning the hall as bright as midday. The old woman in the corner whimpered and clutched at her shawl. "Now he will roast us," she mumbled, half to herself. "He will roast us like hens over the embers." But the giant merely stepped outside, ducking through the door with surprising grace for one so big. "Do you see now that we are among trolls?" gasped the old woman. "He will come back with some dreadful beast and devour us." The boy only shrugged, the belt firm around his waist. "Whether he is troll or man, we have more to gain by courage than by fear," he replied. In a short while the giant returned, dragging behind him an ox so large and plump that the boy's eyes widened. With a single blow of his great fist behind its ear, the animal dropped, and in one effortless motion the giant lifted it by all 4 legs and laid it over the glowing embers. He turned it this way and that until the hide was roasted brown and the air was rich with the smell of meat. From a cupboard he brought out a silver dish, enormous enough to hold the whole ox without so much as a hoof overhanging. He heaved it onto the table, then disappeared again, this time returning from the cellar rolling a broad cask of wine. He knocked out the lid and set the cask beside the dish, placing next to them 2 knives as long as a man is tall. "Now sit and eat," he said pleasantly. The boy needed no second invite. He took up one of the great knives with both hands and sliced thick pieces of meat for himself and his trembling mother, who stared at the enormous blade as though it might leap up and cut her of its own will. She protested that she could never manage it, but the boy carved for her and coaxed her to eat. Hunger, as it often does, won over fear. When they had eaten their fill, thirst made itself known. The boy grasped the fat cask, lifted it from the table, and set it upon the floor. "Come, mother," he said cheerfully, "here's drink enough for us both." But the cask stood almost as tall as her shoulders, and she could barely reach its rim. So he picked her up as one might lift a child and held her at the edge until she had drunk as much as she dared. Then he clambered up himself, hanging over the side like a cat dipping into a milk pail, and drank until his thirst was slackened. Afterward he hoisted the cask back onto the table as though it were a bucket rather than a barrel. The giant watched all this with eyes that gleamed with interest. "You are a strong little fellow," he observed. The boy smiled and thanked him for the fine meal, urging his mother to do likewise. She, pale and quivering, could do nothing but stammer out a few shaky words of gratitude. As the fire settled into a softer glow, the giant stretched and then said in a thoughtful tone, "There is but 1 bed and a cradle in this house, yet we can manage well enough. The old woman may sleep in the bed, and you, bold lad, can sleep in the cradle." To the boy, the giant's cradle was as large as a bed of 4 posts and feather mattresses. He gladly stripped off his ragged clothes and lay down, feeling the soft straw and thick blankets close about him like the arms of some gentle beast. His mother, though near sick with fear, followed the giant to the bed he showed her and lay down too, though sleep would not come to her readily. The boy, however, kept his eyes open. "It will not do to sleep too soundly," he thought. "I had better listen and see what plans are carried through in the night." And so, wrapped in the warmth of the cradle, but awake in mind, he waited. Chapter 3. Plots in the Dark. The fire burned low, casting long shadows that crawled along walls and ceiling. Outside, the wind moaned around the corners of the house, but inside all was still, save for the occasional crackle from the embers. After some time, the giant's voice floated through the dim hall, speaking in a tone meant only for the old woman's ears. "We might live here very comfortably, you and I," he mused, "if only your son were not in the way." At those words, the boy's heart sharpened, though his breathing remained slow and steady, as if he slept. He heard his mother answer, her voice trembling, "Is there a means of ridding ourselves of him? Is that what you are thinking?" "Nothing easier," replied the giant, who was indeed a troll, though they had not spoken the word aloud. "Tomorrow I shall ask you to stay here and keep the house in order. I will take the boy with me up the hillside to cut cornerstones. When he stands beneath a great rock, I shall loosen it and roll it down upon him. That will be the end of your troublesome son." The boy lay still, every word sinking deep into his mind. He felt neither despair nor panic. Instead, a quiet, fierce calm settled over him. "So that is your plan, grandfather," he thought. "We shall see whose head the rock finds." When morning light crept through the shutter slats, the troll stretched and yawned, acting as though nothing of the night's conversation had happened. He turned to the old woman and spoke politely. "If you would be so kind as to stay and keep house for me today, I should be glad," he said. "The lad and I must go up the hill to fetch some stones for building." The old woman glanced toward the cradle, where her son seemed asleep peacefully, and a small, mean hope flickered behind her eyes. She murmured agreement. The troll took up a huge iron crowbar, heavy enough that no ordinary man could have shifted it, and beckoned to the boy. "Come along," he said. "With all my heart," the boy replied. They climbed into the high land, where rocks thrust up through the soil like the bones of the earth, and there they began to split stones. The troll swung his crowbar with tremendous force, prying loose chunks of rock. The boy worked beside him as though the tool in his hands were but a stick. After a while, the troll wiped his brow and nodded toward a narrow place at the foot of a rocky ledge. "Go down there," he said casually. "See whether there are any cracks low to the ground. We must make sure the stone is firm before we loosen it." The boy understood very well what the troll intended. He walked down into the hollow as if unsuspecting, bent and studied the rock, and called out that all looked sound. Above him, the troll planted his feet, set the iron bar against a massive stone, and heaved with all his might. The rock lurched from its resting place and thundered downward. But the boy, strengthened by the blue belt, caught it in his hands, holding it just long enough to step aside. Then he let it roll past, crashing into the valley below. "Ah," he called up mildly, "now I see what you had in mind. You meant to crush me as flat as a leaf." He scrambled back up the side of the slope, crowbar in hand. "Since the plan did not quite succeed," he said with a smile that showed his teeth, "perhaps you should go down there instead and look after the cracks in the rock while I watch from above. It is only fair that we both do our share." The troll did not dare refuse. Something in the boy's gaze made him uneasy, and he obeyed, limping down into the hollow. As soon as the troll bent to peer at the stone, the boy set the iron bar under an even larger rock. With a mighty heave, he sent it rolling down. The stone struck the troll with such force that it pinned his leg and snapped his thigh like a twig. The giant roared in pain, the sound echoing from cliff to cliff. The boy climbed down, lifted the rock as though it were a mere boulder, and freed him. "You are in a sorry state now," said the boy, slinging the wounded troll across his back like a sack of grain. "But have no fear. I shall not leave you here to freeze. We must get you home." Then he ran toward the red house with his burden as fast as a horse might gallop downhill. The troll howled at each jolt, for the broken bone grated with every step. Back at the house, they laid the troll in his bed, where he groaned and fussed and cursed his ill luck. Night came, and with it another whispered plotting. Chapter 4. Lion's Milk and a Test of Fear. The fire burned low, and the troll lay wrapped in blankets, his wounded leg bound roughly with cloth. The old woman sat nearby, wringing her hands, her face marked with worry and an uneasiness that was not entirely for the troll. "How shall we rid ourselves of this boy?" the troll muttered. "He is stronger than any man I have seen. My stone trick failed, and that is the truth of it." The old woman shook her head. "If you cannot devise a plan, I surely cannot," she replied. "He is my own son, but he is not one to be easily moved or fooled." The troll was silent for a time, thinking. At last he smiled, showing teeth like broken stones. "In a garden not far from here, my brother keeps 12 lions," he said. "If those beasts could only get their claws into the lad, they would soon tear him into rags. I can give him the key, send him to fetch lion's milk, and promise that it will cure some sickness. You need only pretend to be ill and insist that nothing but lion's milk will restore you." The old woman nodded slowly, for the thought pleased her. "Yes," she murmured, "I shall say that my life depends on it. He is foolishly dutiful. He will go." From the cradle the boy listened, his resolve sharpening. At dawn he rose and found his mother groaning upon her pallet. "Ah, my son," she moaned, "I am sicker than I can say. My bones ache, my head spins, my breath fails. Only one thing might cure me now, but where could it possibly be found?" "What is that?" he asked quietly. "Lion's milk," she whispered. "I am certain that if I could taste lion's milk, my strength would return. But how could such a thing be had? No one would dare approach the lions." The boy feigned concern and helplessness, but before he could speak, the troll, who had been listening, interrupted from his bed. "That need not trouble us," he said. "My brother's garden is full of lions, and here's the key to its gate. If your son dares to try, he may go and fetch the milk." So the boy took the key and a sturdy pail and set off, his face serious, though inside he smiled. The lion's garden lay within high stone walls. When he unlocked the gate and stepped inside, 12 great lions rose upon their hind paws and roared, their manes bristling, their eyes burning like coals. Most men would have turned and fled. The boy walked forward. He seized the largest lion by its front paws and swung it about, dashing it against rock and stump until its bones shattered. When he let it fall, there was nothing left whole but its 2 paws. The other lions, seeing this, felt fear slide like cold water along their spines. They dropped to the ground and crawled toward him, tails tucked, eyes lowered like dogs, seeking mercy. "Now," the boy said, "we understand one another." He milked the lions as calmly as if they were cows, taken only a little, for he did not wish to harm them. They stood quiet, grateful to escape with their hides intact. When he turned toward home, they followed him, Paddin at his heels. At the red house, the lions lay down before the door, resting their paws upon the threshold as though they were guardians carved from living stone. "See, Mother," the boy said quietly as he entered, holding up the pail with its small measure of milk. "Here is lion's milk. You will soon be well." The troll craned his neck from the bed, his eyes narrowing. "You expect me to believe that?" he scoffed. "No boy could milk a lion and come home whole. This is some trick." The boy silently opened the door. At once, the lions outside sprang up, their eyes flashing. They seized the troll in their jaws, dragging him from his bed. He screamed and flailed until the boy ordered them to let go. When they obeyed, the troll lay panting, terror etched into his face. He had learned to respect the boy's strength, yet his malice was not spent. That night, when pain and fear had dulled enough for him to speak again, he returned to his scheming. Chapter 5. Apples of Sleep and a Princess in Captivity. As the embers glowed, the troll spoke to the old woman in a hoarse whisper. "I do not know how to destroy this lad," he confessed. "He is strong, and fate seems to walk at his side. Perhaps my brothers can do what I cannot." He told her then of his 2 brothers who lived in a distant castle, far grander than the red house, and of the orchard that circled it, a grove of trees bearing apples with skins that shone like burnished gold. "Whoever eats those apples," he said, "falls into a deep sleep that lasts 3 days and 3 nights. If we can send the boy there in search of the fruit, he will surely taste them. While he sleeps, my brothers, who are fiercer and stronger than I, will rip him to pieces." The old woman agreed to play her part. In the morning, she lay groaning and sighing louder than before. "Oh, my son," she cried, "the lion's milk has not helped me. Perhaps it was too little. I shall die, I know it, unless I can taste one of the apples that grow in the orchard near the castle where your host's brothers dwell. I have heard that those fruits have great virtue. If I could but bite into one, I should live." "I will go," said the boy without hesitation. The lions, who had grown fond of him, patted at his heels when he set out. Together they traveled until they came to the orchard, where trees spread their branches heavy with shining apples. The boy climbed one of the tallest trees and picked as many apples as he could carry. The scent alone was irresistible, and he felt hunger rise up in him like a tide. "Why should I not taste what I risk so much to bring?" he thought. He ate one apple, then another. The sweetness seeped into his limbs, filling him with drowsiness. He slid down from the tree, intending to gather the fruit in a pile, but before he could straighten, sleep fell upon him like a heavy cloak. He collapsed on the grass, breathing steadily, eyes closed. Around him, the lions formed a ring, lying with their bodies touching, their golden eyes ever watchful. On the 3rd day, the troll's brothers came. They did not arrive as men, but as wild, snorting creatures that shook the earth with each hoofbeat, shapes that were half horse and half something darker. Their eyes burned with cruelty as they approached the sleeping boy. "Who has dared enter our orchard?" they thundered. "We shall tear him so small that no bone shall be left unbroken." But before they could reach the lad, the lions leapt to their feet, their roars splitting the air. They hurled themselves at the trolls, teeth and claws flashing. The battle that followed was fierce and terrible. When it ended, the trolls lay in shredded heaps, scattered across the orchard like clods of earth after a storm. The lions, bloodied but triumphant, licked their wounds and resumed their places around the sleeping boy. He did not awaken until the sun stood low on the 3rd day. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, puzzled by the strange marks of hooves and claws on the ground and the torn earth about him. What has taken place here? He wondered aloud. From the castle windows nearby, a face watched him, a young woman's face, pale and beautiful. She had seen everything. When the boy drew nearer, she called softly to him. "You have escaped death without knowing it," she said. "My captors came to tear you apart. If not for your lions, you would now be dust upon the ground." The boy looked up, astonished. "To think that I might have lost my life without so much as waking," he said. "I owe more to my friends than I knew." The princess, for such she was, asked him to enter the castle. She had long been held there against her will, a prize stolen from her father, the king of a distant land. I have not seen a human soul free of these trolls in a long time, she confessed. Come in, and let us speak a while. The boy would have brought the lions with him, but their presence frightened her, and he bade them wait outside like faithful sentinels. Within the castle they walked through halls that still carried the harsh echo of their former masters, though now they stood strangely silent. The princess told him how the trolls had seized her, how they had threatened her with a forced marriage, how she had watched them torment any traveler foolish enough to come near. Her heart, she said, had not changed in captivity. She still dreamed of freedom and of a husband who would win her with courage rather than chains. Will you return to your father now that your captors are gone? The boy asked. She hesitated, looking at him with clear eyes. I may go home, she said, or I may stay with the one who has freed me. Tell me, what is in your heart? Would you have me as your wife? The boy felt the answer rise from the deepest part of him. I would, he said simply, if you would have me. So they promised themselves to one another, and the castle, once a place of fear, began to feel like a home. In a great hall, they found 2 enormous swords hanging high upon the wall, blades as long as the boy was tall. The princess pointed to them. I wonder if you have strength enough to lift one of these, she said, half teasing. The boy laughed softly. If I cannot wield such a toy, he replied, I would be ashamed indeed. He stacked chairs one upon another, climbed up, brushed the tip of one sword with his fingertips, and tossed it into the air. Catching it by the hilt, he leapt down and struck the floor with such force that the hall shook and dust fell from the rafters. He then tucked the sword beneath his arm, carrying it as easily as though it were a walking stick. For a time they lived in that castle, the lions guarding the gates and the rooms filling slowly with the warmth of human voices. Yet, eventually, the princess said, My parents must believe me dead or lost. I cannot rest entirely while they grieve. I must go home to tell them what has become of me, and to show them that I live. The boy agreed that this was right. They loaded a ship with treasures from the troll's hoard and provisions for the journey, and she set sail for Arabia, the land of her birth, promising to send for him or return as soon as she could. The boy watched the ship till it vanished on the horizon. When the sea swallowed it from sight, a quiet restlessness awoke within him. Chapter 6. Betrayal and Blindness. Left alone in the castle with his lions, the boy wandered through its rooms, listening to the emptiness echo. After some days, he remembered the reason he had first journeyed to this place, to fetch the enchanted apples for his mother's supposed illness. Though she plotted against me, he reflected, she is still my mother. Perhaps she has repented. At the very least, I should see what has become of her and the troll. So he set out with the lions trotting behind him and returned at last to the red house, where he found his mother and the troll sitting in health, as though no sickness had ever troubled them. What a wretched home you keep, he said frankly, looking around at the smoky beams and earthen floor. Come with me to my castle, and you shall see what life can be. Their eyes gleamed with greed at the thought of such splendor. They were eager to go. On the path, his mother walked close beside him, her voice soft and curious. How is it that you have become so strong, my son? she asked, as though she did not know. "It was the blue belt," he answered. "The one we saw on the hill that day we were begging. When you forbade me to touch it, I went back and tied it around my waist. From that moment, my strength has been like this." "Do you still wear it?" she asked, feigning simple interest. "Yes," he said, "it is here." "Let me see," she murmured. He, trusting her still more than he should have, opened his shirt to show her. Quick as a striking snake, she snatched the belt off and wound it around her fist. "Now," she cried, her eyes burning with cruelty, "what shall I do with such a wretch of a boy? With one blow I could dash out your brains." The troll, never far from malice, shook his head. "Too easy a death," he said. "Better that we first burn out his eyes and then send him adrift in a little boat. Let the waves decide his fate." The boy pleaded for mercy, his heart torn not so much by fear as by the realization that his own mother could choose such a path. But their hearts were stone. They burned out his eyes. The world became darkness, hot tears falling into empty air. They dragged him to a small boat, shoved it from shore, and left him blind upon the waters. The lions, however, would not abandon their friend. They leapt into the sea and swam after the boat, their strong bodies slicing the waves. At last, they caught the boat's sides in their teeth and towed it toward a distant island. There they hauled it ashore and gently helped the boy out, laying him beneath the sheltering branches of a fir tree. They hunted game for him, catching birds and small animals, and plucked the feathers to make him a bed of down. Yet he was still blind, and his food remained raw. Time passed in a slow, gray haze. The boy listened to the rustle of the trees, the whisper of waves, the padding of lion paws, and wondered whether this would be his life until death. One day, the largest lion chased a hare across the island. The hare, blind with fear, ran heedless over roots and stones until it struck a fir stump and tumbled head over heels into a clear spring nearby. When it scrambled out, it stopped, its nose twitching. Its eyes, which had been clouded, now shone bright and keen. With a sudden leap, it bounded away, seeing every obstacle in its path. The lion watched with astonishment. "So," he thought, "there is more in that spring than cool water?" He went back to the blind boy, took him gently by the collar, and dragged him, despite his protests, toward the spring. Before the lad could resist, the lion dipped him head and shoulders into the water. The boy emerged sputtering, wiping his face. He blinked. Light flooded back into his world. He saw the green of the leaves, the glint of the water, the golden mane of the lion standing over him. With a shout of joy, he embraced the animal's neck. "Now we shall not stay here," he declared. "We shall find our way back to the mainland." He signaled to the lions to lie side by side in the shallows, forming a living raft. Stepping carefully onto their broad backs, he balanced himself while they swam, bearing him across the waves to the shore beyond. Once upon land again, he led them into a birch copse and bade them lie hidden. Then he crept toward his old castle, moving with the silence of a shadow. Through the keyhole of the kitchen door, he peered inside. There, hanging by itself above the doorway, gleamed the blue belt. His heart began to beat like a drum. The kitchen was empty. He slipped in, soft as a cat, and snatched the belt from its nail. As soon as he buckled it around his waist, power rushed back into his limbs. The memory of all that had been done to him flared like fire in his mind. He stamped and kicked upon the floor, his anger echoing through the hall. His mother came rushing in, her face pale. "Oh, my dear boy," she cried, her voice full of false sweetness. "You have got the belt back. Give it to me. I will take good care of it for you." He looked at her steadily. "You shall have the judgment you passed upon me," he said. Without hesitation, he dashed out her brains, ending her treachery. The troll, hearing the commotion, hobbled in, trembling. "Spare me," he begged, falling to his knees. "Do not kill me. I will serve you faithfully." "You shall live," the boy said coldly, "but only to taste the punishment you gave me." He burned out the troll's eyes and set him adrift in a small boat, alone upon the sea. No lions followed that vessel. Chapter 7. The Great Bird and the Dancing Bear. Now the boy was master of the castle and free of his enemies, yet his heart was not at peace. He thought constantly of the princess who had sailed away to Arabia. At last he could bear the longing no more. "I must seek her," he decided. "My heart will not rest until I stand by her side again." He loaded 4 ships with goods and strong sailors, and they set out over the sea. For a time, wind and weather served them well, but then a dead calm fell. They lay windbound beside a rocky island, the waves gently rocking the hulls as the days inched past. To pass the hours, the sailors went ashore. There, amid the rocks, they found a huge egg, large as a small house, lying cracked but unbroken. They beat upon it with stones, curious to see what might be inside, but the shell did not yield. The boy, hearing their shouts, came with his great sword to see. When he saw the egg, he understood at once that such a thing belonged to no ordinary bird. "This is trouble," he said quietly. "Yet the deed is done. We may as well see it through." With a single blow of his sword, he split the shell. Out from it burst a monstrous chick, as large as an elephant, flapping clumsy wings and stretching its neck toward the sky. "Now we have done wrong indeed," the boy murmured. "This may cost us dear." He turned to his men. "If a strong wind blows in our favor, can you sail to Arabia within a day and a night?" he asked. They swore they could, if the breeze were true. "Then we must flee while we can," he said. "Make all haste." They set their sails, and the wind, as though summoned by fate itself, rose behind them, driving them swiftly over the water. In less than 24 hours, they reached the coast of Arabia. As soon as they landed, the boy ordered every sailor to bury himself up to the eyes in a sandhill near the shore, so that only their faces and the masts of the ship showed. He and the captains climbed to a high crag and sat under a fir, watching the sea. Before long, a great shadow darkened the sun. The air thundered with the beating of wings. The enormous bird, now grown, came flying with an island clutched in its claws. With a mighty heave, it dropped the island upon the anchored fleet, crushing every ship beneath rock and earth. Then, angry that its prey had fled, it flew to the sandhill and flapped its wings so fiercely that the buried sailors felt the sand scour their faces like knives. The bird swooped past the crag where the boy sat and nearly blew him from his seat. But he was ready. With a swift stroke of his sword, he struck the bird as it passed, and it fell dead upon the beach. Now stranded but alive, they walked toward the city, which was bright with banners, filled with voices, and humming with the life of a kingdom at peace. Everyone seemed overjoyed, for the king had recently recovered his daughter, the very princess the boy had freed from the trolls. But the king, being cautious and overfond, had hidden her away once more, this time by his own will, promising her hand to any man who could find her, though she had already given her heart elsewhere. As the boy walked along the streets, he saw a man selling white bearskins. A thought came to him. He bought one of the hides and wrapped himself in it, disguising his shape. One of his captains took an iron chain, fastened it to the hide, and pretended to lead him like a tamed beast. Thus they went into the town, and soon people gathered about them, laughing in amazement at the sight of a bear that danced, bowed, and leapt at its master's command. News flew swiftly to the palace. "Never has such a marvel been seen," people said. "There is a white bear in the city that dances as clever as any trained performer." The king, curious, invited them to the castle. When they arrived, courtiers shrank back in fear at the massive beast, but the captain reassured them. "There is no danger," he said, "so long as no one laughs at him. But if you mock him, he may fly into a rage and tear you to pieces." The king sternly warned his court to keep their faces solemn. The bear danced and capered, rolled and pranced, to the delight of all who watched. But at last, one of the king's maidens, unable to contain her amusement, burst into laughter, pointing and clapping. At once the bear lunged and struck her down, tearing her garments so that hardly a scrap remained. There was a cry of horror, and many blamed the captain. He wrung his hands and lamented loudly, but the king merely shrugged. "She was but a maid," he said. "Her loss is my sorrow, not yours." When the performance ended, night was late upon them. "It would be troublesome to send you away at this hour," the king said. "Let the bear sleep in the castle." The captain suggested that it might rest by the kitchen fire, but the king, who enjoyed showing his power, insisted that the creature be lodged in one of the upper chambers upon cushions and pillows. So the bear was given a soft bed near a warm hearth, and the captain lay in a side room. But at midnight the king came quietly, carrying a lamp and a large ring of keys. He woke the captain and led the chained bear through galleries and staircases, along twisting corridors, to a pier that stretched out over the dark sea. There he worked at hidden levers and bolts until a small house floated up to the pier, gently bobbing on the waves. In this place he had hidden his daughter, keeping her from the eyes of all who sought her. He went inside first, telling her of the marvels the dancing bear had performed. She was afraid and said she did not wish to see it, but he coaxed her. "There is no danger if you do not laugh," he assured her. At last she agreed to look upon it. They brought the bear in and locked the door behind them. Once again the lad in his disguise danced and tumbled, making the princess smile despite herself. One of her maids, however, could not resist laughing outright. With a roar, the bear sprang upon her and tore her as he had the other maid. The princess began to weep with fright and grief, but the king dismissed her tears. "She was only a servant," he said. "Such maids can be replaced. We shall keep the bear here for the night. I do not wish to lead it along all those passages again in the dark." "I will not sleep in the same room as that beast," declared the princess. But the bear, as if weary, curled up by the stove, his shaggy head on his paws. At last it was settled that the princess would sleep there as well, with a lamp burning. When the king had left, locking the door behind him, the bear lifted his head and spoke softly. "Undo my collar," he whispered. She gasped, dropping the lamp's handle. "Who speaks?" she cried, her heart hammering. "Where is the man whose voice I hear?" "Here," he said. "Be not afraid. Feel for the collar beneath this hide and loosen it." Her hand shook, but she reached out and found the iron band around the bear's neck. The moment she loosened it, the head of the bear came away like a mask, and beneath it she saw the face she knew and loved, the beggar boy who had freed her from the troll's castle. Her joy was like a bright flame. She laughed and wept together, holding his hands and showering him with questions. He told her all that had happened since they parted, his mother's treachery, his blindness and rescue, his journey over the sea, the destruction of his ships, his coming in the bear's disguise. She wished to run at once to her father and reveal everything, but the lad shook his head. "Let me win you openly once more," he said gently. "I will claim you by the trial the king himself has set, and then no one can say we have stolen what was not freely given." Reluctantly, she agreed. In the morning, when the king arrived, the bear lay as if asleep by the stove, the hide pulled up over the lad's face. The princess reported that the beast had lain as still as a log all night. Satisfied, the king led the bear back to the castle. Later that day, the boy cast off the bear skin and dressed himself in garments cut for a prince. Thus attired, he went before the king. Chapter 8. Seeking the Hidden Princess. He bowed and spoke with respectful boldness. "I have heard," he said, "that your majesty has promised your daughter's hand to any man who can find her in the place where you have hidden her. I wish to seek her." The king measured him with a skeptical eye. "Many have tried," he replied. "None have succeeded, and they have all lost their lives in the attempt. If you fail to find her within a single day and night, your life too shall be forfeit." "I understand," said the lad calmly. "If I lose, it is my own doing, but I will try." Within the castle, music sounded. There were musicians playing and fair maids to dance with, and the lad, instead of rushing about like the others who had sought the princess before him, danced and laughed and made merry. Hour after hour slipped by. When half the time had passed, the king approached him, frowning. "You spend your hours unwisely," he said. "You will never find her this way. I pity you, for you seem a brave lad, but your life is nearly lost." "While there is breath, there is hope," the boy replied with a smile. "The day is not yet done." He continued to dance until only 1 hour remained. Then he turned to the king. "Now I shall search," he said. "It is hopeless," the king insisted. "The time is nearly spent." "Take your lamp and your keys," said the lad, "and follow me. There's more time than you think." Reluctantly, the king did as he asked. The boy led him through the castle, down the same galleries and stairs where the king had led the chained bear in the night. Door after door they opened, descending farther into the quiet depths. At last they reached the pier above the sea. The king shook his head. "You are leading us to the water's edge," he said. "You will find nothing but waves and gulls." "Still some minutes remain," replied the lad. "Pull the posts and pins as you did before." The king hesitated, fumbling with his keys, trying to delay the time until the hour would pass. But the lad knew the workings now. He himself pulled at the hidden levers, and soon the small house floated up to the pier. "Time is up," cried the king. "Headsman, step forth." "No," said the lad calmly. "There are still moments left, and with them I shall act." He pushed at the door, but the king protested that there was no key. "If you lack a key, I have one of my own," the boy replied, and with a mighty kick he burst the door open so that the planks flew inward. There in the doorway stood the princess, radiant with joy. She threw herself into his arms and turned to her father. "This is the man who freed me from the trolls," she declared. "This is the one I love. No other shall be my husband." The king, seeing the truth in her face and recalling the tales of the dancing bear and the bold lad before him, could say nothing more. He yielded at last, and thus the beggar boy, who had once walked barefoot behind an old woman's empty bag, married the daughter of the king of Arabia. He had journeyed from poverty to plenty, from blindness to sight, from betrayal to a love proven through trial. And he had done it all with a blue belt about his waist and a heart that refused to bow to fear. Closing reflection, the measure of strength. So, dear listener, our tale of the blue belt comes to its rest. We have followed a boy who began with nothing but hunger and a spark of courage, and watched him grow into a man who could lift giants, face lions, outwit trolls, and cross oceans. Yet, if we look closely, we see that his true strength did not come only from the belt at his waist. The belt gave him power in his limbs, but it could not have guided his choices. It was his own heart that chose mercy for the wounded troll, loyalty for the lions who helped him, persistence when he was blind upon an island, and love for the princess who trusted him. We have met a mother whose fear twisted into greed and betrayal, and we have seen where such a path leads. We have met trolls whose strength was ruined by cruelty, and lions whose fierceness became friendship. In each of them, there is a quiet reminder that what we love, fear, and choose shapes not only our fate, but the lives of those around us. Perhaps in our own lives, the blue belt is any gift or power we carry, our talents, our knowledge, our opportunities. They can lift us, or they can lead us astray, depending on the heart that wears them. As you drift toward rest, may this story leave you with a soft question. Where does your true strength lie? In what you hold in your hands, or in the courage and kindness that guide them? Thank you for listening. This is your narrator, Ali, wishing you calm nights, brave hearts, and journeys that lead you, like our beggar boy, from darkness into a wider, wiser light. For more stories that can help you relax, don't forget to like and subscribe.